All right, so let's talk formulas and functions. So a formula, what is that? A formula is going to look like this. It's where I'm giving the sheet, the spreadsheet, a series of tasks to do, a mathematical equation. It's a formula. Now, the thing about Google Sheets or Excel is that rather than putting in numbers, I can use what are called cell references to make my formula work. So let's try this. I would like to have an average for each student here. So I'm going to make a column that says average. And what I basically would like this column to do is add up all of their scores and divide it by the number of assignments, okay? So there's two ways to do this, with a formula and with a function. We're going to start with formulas. So I'm going to hit the equal sign. That sets off the trigger to Excel or to Google Sheets to say, okay, we're about to write some math here, okay? You have to have that equal sign to start with. Now you see it's actually suggesting that I should do an average on this range of cells. We're going to come back to that. We're going to do that in a second because there is another way to do this. What I'm going to do is actually put in the very first one, click on the cell that I want. So you see I'm not typing the number 67. I'm clicking on cell C2. I'm going to do the plus sign, click on the next cell, the plus sign, click on the next cell, and so on. Now, I'm going to use a little bit of my math skills. I'm going to go back and I'm going to put parentheses around everything I've just added up. Because what I want to do afterwards is divide by the entire thing by a certain number. And I'm just going to type the number in here. So I'm going to divide it by 5. And I'm going to hit enter. And I get 44. So, do I have to do that all the way down? Absolutely not. There is a little trick called autofill. So once you get one formula written, use the square in the corner of your cell to drag down to the rest of your data. Now you'll notice as I drag down, the numbers are changing here, and that's because Google Sheets knows that you are now referencing the cells in that row, and it adjusts your formula. So get your formula right and get it correct one place, drag it down, and that formula will carry through. Now that's a formula. You can also type in formulas like equals 567 divided by 3, hit enter, and you can get a number out of that. The great thing about using cell references, where we're referencing the cell, we're not typing the actual number, is that as these numbers change, my average is going to change. Okay? So the student's going to get a better average or worse average depending on what I'm changing here. These will automatically adjust, and that's great. You don't have to recalculate. All right? So let's look at functions next. Now functions are a lot like formulas, but instead of using numbers or cell references, although they do use those things, they always start with a command or a command word. So let me show you how this average function is going to work. Now you noticed earlier when I typed an equal sign, I got a suggestion. It actually suggested that I use the average function. But let me show you how to type that in case it doesn't pop up. So a function involves a word after the equal sign, and that word is going to tell it what to do. So for this case, I am going to use average. And as I start typing average, you see there are other ones that pop up. And you can click on these and see what they do, but we're just going to go with a basic average first. As soon as I click on average, it gives me a parentheses here. And inside of these parentheses, whatever I put, it will average. So I'm going to, instead of typing each individual cell, which you can do, I'm going to select the entire range of data for this student. So I'm going from C2 to G2. And then I'm going to close my parentheses. And that's going to automatically average for me. I don't have to hit this plus this plus this plus this plus this divided by 5. I can just average this whole row. And when I hit enter, I get my average. Same thing applies here. As you change numbers, that function will change. Okay? Now there are quite a bit of other functions that you might be interested in learning. So let me show you kind of how to find those and what they do, and some of the most common ones. So we're going to just go through, I guess, the most commonly 4 or 5 used ones. The next one that's really common is sum. So a sum function adds up everything. Same thing, equals sum, open parentheses, add everything together, close your parentheses, and hit enter. That's a sum function. A max function. If I want the highest score of a student, I want to say I want the max of these values, and then it's going to give me the highest number of those values. Min works the same way for the smallest number. So if I want the smallest number equals min, highlight these numbers and close. Those are some of the most commonly used functions, but there are a lot of others. One of the best ones to use is an if-then function. So let me show you how the if-then works. So let's say, for instance, that if a student gets a 90 or above on their unit test, they, get a special treat. So I want to find out how many kids got 90 or above, and I want to do this quickly, and I want it to say something like, yes, special treat at the end. Okay, so I'm going to hit equals sign if. I have to give this one a series of things to do, and you can see down here I'm getting instructions. So right now I'm on this step of writing my function. So I'm going to say, all right, if this total equals, well, let's do this, greater than or equal to 90, then, and you have to use little quotation marks anytime you're going to write words, then I want you to spit out the words special treat, and if not, I want you to spit out the words no treat for you. Okay, now I'm going to close my parentheses and hit enter. I'm going to use my little autofill trick that we did earlier, and I'm going to drag this formula down, and let's see if it worked. So it worked. Every time this function sees this number, it looks to see if it's greater than or equal to 90. If it is, they see the word special treat. If it's not, no treat for you. So it's a really easy way. You could do letter grades this way, like you could have it look at the average and then show the letter grades. So that's a function. There are quite a bit of other functions, and so those were probably the most commonly used ones that you'll see on the test and ones that you would use yourselves. But there is a whole world out there you can look up functions in. If there's something specifically you want to do, you just look up to see if there's a function that will do that for you, and then you write that function out. But those are functions. They're very, very useful. You'll also notice, I'm going to go back and show you another little thing here. There is a function thing here. And it has a list of some common functions, and then if you hit more functions, it will take you to the huge list of functions. Okay, I'm going to show you one more other little function trick, and this one is just kind of just a little common one. And this function has no arguments, so it doesn't have any kind of equations in it. And that's if we just hit equals today and open and close parentheses, and it puts today's date. And every day that would change. So every day I opened this, it would have the current date at the top right corner. That way I don't have to constantly change the date when I'm opening a document. You can use this in any Excel spreadsheet. It's really, really handy. Equals now works the same way, but also inserts the time. So it's really, really handy, and it updates all the time. But those are your formulas and functions. So next we're going to talk about charts and graphs. Google Sheets is pretty smart. It can pretty much tell what you want to analyze and how you want to analyze that data through different charts and graphs. All you have to tell Google Sheets is what data you want to use. So let's start off with the first way of doing this. I have no idea what data I want to use. I know I want something out of my data sheet, but I'm not sure what data and in what order that I want to use it in. So what I'm going to do is just click anywhere inside of my data. I'm not going to double click, just single click anywhere inside of my data. And I have two ways to get to a chart. I can click the Insert Chart button here on my toolbar, or I can hit Insert and go down to Chart. Either way, I immediately get a chart. Now, this chart that it gave me compares how students did on their unit test versus how they did on quiz 1 on a scale, a little scatter plot chart. That's great. Maybe that's not really what I want. So there's other suggested charts. I'm going to go over here on the right and I can change my chart type. Well, let's check on this one. Ooh, that actually shows me kind of interesting how students have performed over time. I can also see quiz 1 and their first name. So that's just the data from column C and all of the kids' first names. It's kind of interesting. And then this one shows me one student's information in kind of a pie chart and how much, kind of how they've done. Some of these charts don't make any sense, and they're not things that I really want to use. But that is one way to quickly get a chart. Now you can use these suggested charts here, or you can scroll down and you can choose any of the charts listed below, and Google Sheets will attempt to make a chart based on that information. Like I said, sometimes they're going to make sense, sometimes they're not going to make sense. So you want to kind of look and see, yeah, this one doesn't even let me do that because I don't have the right type of data. So you're going to have to look and see what kind of data you need. So the second method we're going to do, let me just delete my chart and start over, is actually know what I want to make a chart out of. I actually want to make a chart of averages. I want to see the students' averages. And one of the things that I want to do is see them in order of how students are doing. So I'm going to actually sort this column before I do anything else. I'm going to sort column H from the highest to the lowest average. And I want to see how students are performing. So here's what I'm going to do. Because I want their first names and because I want their average, first I'm going to select those two things. So here's how we do that. I'm going to click on the letter H. I've already done that, so I've got all of column H. I'm going to hold down the Control key on my keyboard, and then I'm going to click on column A. So you can see I have column A all highlighted and column H. Both of them are all blue. And now I'm going to hit Insert Chart. Now this time, the chart that I get makes sense to me. It's the chart that I wanted. It's a chart that shows me all the students' averages and then all of their names listed next to their little columns. I can still go over and make some changes. So if I want this chart to be sideways, like a bar chart, because I can see their names better, I can do that. I can change the labels. I can change all these little settings. And again, this all just depends on the type of chart that you choose. All right, so I'm going to hop over to the Customize tab here, and I have all of these different things that I can change about this chart. Start with chart style. I can change the background color of the chart. I can change the font that we use with the chart. I can make it 3D. Okay. All of these settings are things that you can change. So the chart title, you can change what that looks like. You can change what the series and the colors look like. So if I want these bars to be green, I can do that. If I want them to be red, I can do that. I can change every little piece of this chart. I can choose where I want my legend to be. So I actually don't want my legend to be there because it's just going to be student averages. I can change my axis, which is the top or the bottom here, and the side axis. Every one of these settings I can go through. The grid lines are here. I can change those colors to be certain colors. Really, really customizable. So everything you could want to change about the chart. Now I'm going to close my chart editor on the right, and I want to show you how to get back to these settings. So I've got my chart, but I don't really like that it's like right on top of my data. I want to put it somewhere else. We have 3 little dots here in the corner of our chart. And this gives me some different options. One, I can save this chart as a picture. Then I could use it somewhere else. So maybe I could use it in a presentation I was doing. I can copy this chart and paste it in another spreadsheet. Or I can move it to its own sheet. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit Move to Own Sheet. And then what it's going to do is put this entire chart on its own little tab, its own little sheet down here. And it takes up the whole screen. So it maximizes it out and makes it look even better. All right. Now, if I still want to make any changes to this chart, I can hit those 3 little dots, or I can hit Edit Chart, and I am back to all of my changes, and I'm still able to edit and move the chart. Now, the great thing about charts is that everything is tied to the chart. So let's take for example. I'm gonna look at Brittany Elder here. She has an average of 52. I'm gonna change her scores drastically. So I'm gonna give her like a really high average compared to everybody else. She's not gonna be an 80. I'm gonna go over and look. And this chart is tied to that data. So Brittany's average changes immediately. So you can create charts ahead of time before you even have the data, and then you can see what they do. I want to show you a different way to look at data, and I want to tie this back to what we've done with Google Forms. So this is a Google form that I had people fill out after a training session, and I've got all of this data. Now, you remember that Google Forms actually provides you with some charts and graphs based on the questions that you did. But let's say I want a different kind of chart and graph, and I've got my data in my spreadsheet, so I should be able to do that. So again, I just have to tell Google Sheets what I want it to do. I just have to say, okay, here's the data, now look at it. So I'm going to say I want to have a pie chart out of this data. I want to know what percentage of people strongly agreed, disagreed, and all that good stuff. So I'm going to highlight just the entire column by clicking on the letter I. And then I'm going to say Insert Chart. Now, it's pretty smart. It pulled a pie chart up. If it hadn't, I could switch to a pie chart here. But it gives me a good suggested chart. And it's putting the question as the title of the chart, showing me percentages. And again, I can change all of these things, customize them to be how I want, and then put this on a separate sheet. But it just helps you visualize the data so much easier. I want to show you one more thing that the spreadsheet can do, and that's this Explore button in the bottom right-hand corner. This is also related to charts and graphs. So when I click on that Explore button, I actually get a series of things that it actually wants to give me. Like it's giving me suggestions for different charts, it's giving me different kinds of analysis. And if I like any of these things, like I want to see a chart like this, I just click this little Add button and it will put that chart in my spreadsheet. So you don't even have to think about how you want to analyze the data. You can let Google do that thinking for you and then just use their suggestions. But make sure you know how to insert charts and graphs. You definitely need to be able to take data, figure out what kind of chart that looks best with, make sure it makes sense, and insert that chart into a Google Sheet.